What's going on, guys? SpikeZillion here, and I have a different video for you today with a different archetype than I'm normally used to talking about. I have been messing around with Valance for the past little while. I had been playing them since Tama came out, and when they first came out, they were not very good. And it wasn't that they were bad. I mean, it kind of was. But mostly, to be honest, I don't think it was that they were bad. It was actually more that they just needed a little push. They needed a little bit something. Then Darkwing Blast came out and we got solo activation, and now suddenly the deck feels really good. I think it's just the fact that we get basically a search for Shinanome now because Shinanome searches everything else, and it's pretty great. At the current moment, I think that I could change the levels of all the cards right now, like the number of copies, but I feel pretty good about this list, and I wanted to share it with you today. And if I do have any updates with you guys, I will let you know. This is a pretty experimental list, especially in the extra deck list. Obviously, you can see we have the OCG card, which isn't out yet. It'll be out in March, I believe. But we'll talk about it briefly, and we'll talk about why it's really cool. And until then, I actually might be able to try to build Valance with Crystal Beasts, which I don't know if you've heard, but in Japan, they actually had a player top a regional with Valance and Crystal Beasts. I have yet to find that list, though, so I'm really trying to get that list. If someone can send it to me in the comment section below, or in my DMs on Twitter, that would be fantastic. It's going to be at SpikeZillion, so yeah, you'll find me there. So, with that being said, let's look at this and let's talk about this deck list and explain the reasonings for everything. So you are going to have the full Valance package. We also have a couple special scales. So we'll talk about the special scales first. Let's talk about Curtain Raiser. So Curtain Raiser is just a free special summon. It's just a really good card for that. You can use it as a scale 7. It is entirely possible to be used. It's just not quite as good. Same thing with Celestials. Celestials are really good normal summon. Just because it gives you a search for a Pendulum monster in the end phase. That's pretty neat if there's a Pendulum monster on the field other than himself. That's pretty cool. We definitely can have that and will have that most likely. So he's pretty good for that. He or she, who knows. But it's a scale 8 as well, so you can use them for that as well. Not quite as good because we have two level 8s. We have Hojo and we have Dominator Duke, but we'll get to them later. Kaiden Kendo Spirit and Karate Spirit, Kuro Obi. These are the two main ones. The Karate Spirit and the Kendo Spirit are the two main high scales that you'll typically search for if you go beyond the Pendulum, which we'll get to later as well. So Kendo Spirit and Karate Spirit are definitely the two to look out for when it comes to high scales, because now you can Pendulum summon your level 8s with them. And that's it for the high scales. There's not that many. However, we do have ways to change our scale. So we can actually go Pendulum Shift, which is a quick spell that will change the scale of a card in the Pendulum Zone to be between 1 and 10. So obviously you'd pick something like 10 just to have it and be available to it. But yeah, that's that. So it's pretty neat, right? Now let's talk about the Valance themselves now. So first we're going to start with the waters. So we have Hojo. Hojo is our first big boy. We got him and his effect in the Pendulum Zone. You'll see a handful of them have this effect, and then another handful have a lockout effect. But all of them special summon themselves from the Pendulum Zone. So Hojo, if it says if Valance World Shinra Bansho, which is one of the field spells, is in a field zone, or if you control a Water Valance monster, which is all the spellcasters, all the actual humanoid characters, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in its same column. So you'll basically move the card up, right? And then same with Nizuki, except it's, I think it's this, actually, yeah, it's the same one. So it's Shinra Bansho. So if you control Shinra Bansho, if you control a Water Valance, right? Then Scion and Shinanome have the lockout effects. So, instead of it saying that you need to control something, it just says you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in its same column. Also, you cannot special summon non-Valance monsters for the rest of this turn, except from the extra deck. So it doesn't stop you from normal summoning them, which you probably will normal summon something like Celestial Magician, but it will stop you from special summoning them from your hand, which is pretty brutal. However, it does not stop your extra deck, which is great because we're gonna need the extra deck. So yeah, that's pretty good. Shinanome has the exact same effect. And then we have all the machines. So let's go backwards now, and let's go look at the monster effects. So Hojo says, you can target a face-up card in either spell and trap zone, return it to the hand. So you will use this quite often, actually. There's multiple different ways you can use it, and we'll explain as we go. If this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, so this is part of their gimmick, is if they move over one to the left or right, except during the damage step, you can fusion summon one Valance fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand, field, and or pendulum zones, which is super cool, being able to use your pen zones to fuse. And yeah, and you can only use the effect once per turn, so it's hard once for each effect. But yeah, bouncing a spell was pretty good. You can bounce the field spells. You can bounce Senate Switch to make it go again because it's soft once. You can bounce Secret Village of the Spellcasters if you know you're going to get rid of your Spellcasters and you don't want to get locked out for the rest of the turn. Because you'll use Hojo near the end of your combo anyway, for the most part. So, yeah. Pretty useful card, all things considered. Next is Nizuki. Nizuki is one of the two monsters that moves other monsters over. So, in this case, it says you could target one other monster in either main monster zone. Move that monster to an adjacent horizontal monster zone. So, when they say either, they mean either you or your opponent's main monster zone. If this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, moving left or right, you can target one Valance monster card in your spell and trap zone, special summon it to your main monster zone in its same column. So, there's a couple of these monsters that will place extra deck face-up Valance monster cards into the spell and trap zone as continuous spells. So this ability, when she gets moved over, can move these Valance monsters up from the spell and trap zone to the main monster zone straight up, not like diagonally in any way. So it's pretty interesting, pretty unique, right? Now we have Scion. Scion's pretty interesting. This guy is the negate and bounce and destroy and everything else in between. So if you control a special summon card, you can target one effect monster on the field. Toss a coin, and if the result is heads, negate its effects, or if the result is tails, have its attack. This can come up pretty often. What's pretty interesting about it is that obviously you want to get the negate. In this case, this is a lot more powerful if it gets the negate. But then, if you move him over, if this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you can target one card on the field. Card, not monster this time. Toss a coin, and if the result is heads, destroy it, and if the result is tails, return it to the hand. And then hard ones. So yeah, this effect is pretty useful. There's not a whole lot of stipulation to that one. It's really good for continuous spells because it kind of forces the opponent to try to disrupt Scion, which is a good disruption because he doesn't really need, or you don't really need his effect per se. You just kind of want to like make the opponent kind of feel afraid. So like Scion's usually one of the monsters that you get out early on to try and proc all the hand traps and all the negates and stuff. So yeah, that's why Scion's pretty cool. Now we'll get to Shinanome. Shinanome is by far the best Valance monster in the list. Undoubtedly. There's like only one other monster I like more. Or not more necessarily, but like just as much, but still slightly less in my eyes than Shinanome. Shinanome is the goat of the deck. And she's one of two Valance monsters that I have 3 copies of. The other one being Mad Marquez, which we'll get to later. So during the main, oh yeah, we already read this part. So we move her up, right? And then during your main phase, if you control a special summon card, you can add one Valance spell from your deck to your hand. If this card in the main monster zone, if the monster zone, oh goodness, excuse me, I just yawned really bad. It's hard to read cards, jeez. If this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you can add one Valance monster from your deck to your hand. So you can see that when she's summoned, she searches a Valance spell. If she's moved, she adds a valance monster, except herself, and then everything's hard ones. So yeah, she's really really good. You want to get those searches, especially the spell search. If you get ashed on that, that's pretty unfortunate. But the monster search can always help to like still gain a little bit of advantage as much as humanly possible. So yeah, she's pretty good. All right, let's talk about the robots now, the machines. So we have 4 machines here. We have Buster Baron, we have Dominator Duke, we have Mad Marquez, and we have Voltage Viscount. So let's talk about each of them. So Buster Baron is a special summon, but then you get locked. Dominator Duke is a special summon if you have Conic Weason, which is the other field spell, city field spell, or if you control a Valance Fire monster. Mad Marquez is the exact same, so if you control Conic Weason or a Fire Valance, right? And then Voltage Viscount also locks you. Now let's talk about the monster effects. The Buster Baron is the one that moves them around. So if you control this special summon card, you can target one other Valance monster in your main monster zone, move that monster you control to an adjacent horizontal monster zone. If this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, though, you can target one card in either player's Pendulum zone, place it face up in its adjacent spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. So it basically moves them over into the spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. This is probably one of the more useless effects, so that's why Buster Baron's like more just to be a mover and not necessarily like useful for being moved himself. Pretty worthless in that sense for the most part. Dominator Duke, this guy I only play one of because he's not the most useful card in the deck. The part that I like the most about him is he can allow you to take control of an opponent's monster, which will proc negates and stuff. So that's pretty good. But other than that, this guy is not exactly the best monster. So first effect is you can target one set card in the spell and trap zone. That set card cannot be activated this turn, even if this card leaves the field. So that sounds like a really good effect in a way, but they can just chain to that, so it's pretty bad effect to be honest. If this card in the main monster, if this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you can target one face-up monster in your opponent's main monster zone. Take control of that face-up monster, but it cannot declare an attack or activate its effects. Also, it is treated as a valance monster. That part could be really good because you can use it to contact fuse into Dominator Duke, into Grand Duke, which is pretty funny. If it's a high enough level, you could totally do that. So that's pretty epic. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting effect, right? Mad Marquez. This is my second favorite Valance card, next to Shinanome. So, his monster effect says, during your main phase, you can roll a 6-sided die. Excavate that many cards from the top of your deck, or as many as you can, and if you do, you can add one excavated Valance card to your hand. Also, shuffle the rest into the deck. If this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you can roll a 6-sided die. If you roll a 2, 3, 4, or 5, you get special summon one monster card from your spell and trap zone to your main monster zone in its same column. So you would move it straight up, not diagonally. And then hard ones. So yeah, Mad Marquez is really, really interesting because of the fact that he gets to excavate cards for you, and you could potentially hit something really nice. If Shinanome gets ashed or something, you could like pull a place from the beginning out of your ass, or a solo activation or something. So yeah, he's pretty good. Voltage Viscount, though, is also quite good, especially in turn 3 or 5 or whatever turn you're on. Ideally, you want to go first, right? So Voltage Viscount is quite good in this regard. You could also use him in turn 1, but it's a lot harder to do so. During your main phase, if you control the special summon card, you can place one face-up Valance Pendulum monster from your extra deck face-up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. If this card in the monster zone moves to another monster zone, you place one face-up Valance Pendulum monster from your extra deck in your Pendulum zone. So you literally get to do the same effect effectively twice, which is pretty hilarious. Because if I'm not mistaken, if it gets placed as a continuous spell, but it's one of the Pendulum zones, it still counts as being in the Pendulum zone, which is quite funny. I could be wrong about that ruling, but yeah, it's pretty funny. So yeah, Voltage Viscount is a really good card. It's just not quite as good as some of the other cards in the list. But he's one of the best on the crackback. So, yeah, he's pretty awesome. So let's talk about some of these spells here. So we'll talk about the Valance spells first. So we have Valance Awakening Solo Activation. This is new from Darkwing Blast. This is probably the best spell card on the list, to be honest, just because it's a really nice way to get a free scale. Place one Valance Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum zone. If a card is in a field zone, you banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Valance monster in your main monster zone. Move that monster you control to an adjacent horizontal monster zone. And then it's hard once. So yeah, this basically works as a free Senate switch, which is pretty great, and then it also scales for you, which is obviously good. Next, we have the Place of Beginning. Add one Valance field spell from your deck to your hand, then you can play a following effect. Destroy one Pendulum monster you control. Pendulum monster card, you control, and if you do, add one Senate switch from your deck to your hand. If this card is in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, you can banish this card. Place one face-up Valance Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your Pendulum zone. Hard once. So yeah, the first effect is pretty useful, because you get a field spell and you get Senate Switch, which will allow you to be able to go solo activation full power, which is great. And then obviously the field spells are just really good. But the second effect is also great for the crackback once again. Basically, it's the exact same thing as Voltage Viscount. Now, Conagwisin, this is one of the field spells. So this field spell is the one that moves the monsters backwards. It says, when this card is activated, place one Valance field spell from your deck face up in your opponent's field zone except Conagwisin. So it'd basically be the other one, which is Shinra Bancho. If there are two cards in the field zones, the turn player can target one effect monster in the main monster zone, in the same column as one of the monsters they control. They place that opponent's monster face up as a continuous spell in their spell and trap zone in its same column. If the zone is occupied, destroy the occupying card. So basically pops the back row as they're moving backwards into that back row's position, and then they're in the back row, so that's obviously very good. So that's quite good, right? And then Shinra Bancho is the opposite. It moves them up instead of moving them backwards. And it also requires two cards in the field zones, and also when it's activated, it also activates the other field spell other than itself. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Now, we also have Senate Switch. This moves monsters from one monster zone over to the next one, right? That's pretty good. We have Pendulum... Okay, so now we're going to talk about these Pendulum generic cards. We have Pendulum Halt. If you have 3 or more face-up Pendulum monsters with different names in your extra deck, draw 2 cards. You cannot add cards from the deck to your hand for the rest of this turn after this card resolves. So you use this near the end of your combo to be able to potentially go even further, right? So that's pretty good. And then you have Pendulum Paradox. I like this one the most. Add 2 face-up Pendulum monsters with the same Pendulum scale, but different names, from your extra deck to your hand. This is a way to be able to continue playing before you go into Beyond the Pendulum effect, right? So it's pretty scary to go into Beyond the Pendulum effect, and so this can save you from dealing with any issues like Ash and that. And then finally we have Pendulum Shift, which changes our scale between 1 to 10, which is quite good. So yeah, that's all the main deck stuff. Now, let's talk about side deck. Alright, so looking at the side deck here, we have Ash Blossom at 3. Kind of obvious why. I mean, I don't know. Ash is coming back. It's very possible you could switch that with Impermanent, be relatively the same when it comes to like where you would use this. But I found myself liking Ash a little bit more as I go along now. But that being said, yeah, I think Imperm could also be more useful here potentially. And Droll kind of takes a place here. What's kind of interesting is that the more I've been playing against the Shizu tier, the more I've noticed that they actually search quite a bit. But what's even more interesting is that I actually think that the upcoming deck, which is like Castira tier, Shizu, the whole goddamn universe of cards, the pile of fucking shit, pretty much searches a billion things. So Droll, right? Like Droll, right? It seems pretty good. That being said, Droll being thrown out, I think it's possible that if this happens at turn 2 onwards, It's possible they might go triple tack, which could be really scary. Triple tack might get a big return in that format. We'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting. But Droll is looking pretty good for the upcoming list. We'll see though. It's hard to say. Ghost Ogre, I'm gonna hold it down. I'm gonna be real. I know people have been saying Ghost Ogre sucks this format. I kind of feel like Ghost Ogre's still kind of heat. I don't know. There's a lot of very frustrating continuous spells and stuff that are coexisting. Obviously with tier, it's kind of BS because you can't really pop Scream unless you want to give them a search or whatever. But I guess like if you had Droll and Ghost Ogre, it'd be pretty nice. But I think this could be also replaceable. You could switch it with Nibiru. You could actually switch it with Spooky Dogwood. I've been seeing people side that in lately to win Game 3 on time limits. Which actually might be really good in this deck, now that I think about it, because this deck is like a solitaire deck, right? So you actually might go to time very often, so Spooky Dogwood might actually be the play here. So yeah, that's probably like the good replacements over Ghost Ogre. Yeah, I wanted to put a third hand trap in here, and this was the choice I made. Then we got called by... Ash is a bitch. I'm gonna be real. Ash is super annoying because Beyond the Pendulum gets ashed all the time when I was playing this. It was super frustrating. Because you wouldn't think Ash would still be in this format, or Veiler for that matter. I guess Veiler is a good replacement for Ghost Ogre as well. But yeah, called by, it's here. You might as well use it until people get it banned for whatever reason. So yeah, called by's here. Dark Ruler is also here. Oh god, my page died. Give me 1 sec. Oh, what did I do? Oh god, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this page? I'm gonna refresh again. How did I get here? Back me up. Oh Jesus. We're gonna press F11. How do I get out of this page? Oh, it was a tab, I see. Okay, there we go. What on earth? Okay, cool. So anyway. This is Harpy Shadow. This is old Harpy Shadows. Jesus Christ. Okay, sorry, we're back. Dark Roller no more. It exists. It sure is a card. I don't think I have to explain this one, but if I really do have to, I mean, you don't need to like kill. You just have to really just like get rid of their board, right? And then like what are they gonna do? Like, because you can just go Apo. The only thing that you won't be able to really do is like negate back row. Like you can negate stuff with Hope Harbinger, I guess. So you'd have to make Hope Harbinger. It's quite difficult to do. It's possible that you could make Hope Harbinger by having more Dominator Dukes in the deck, so you have more consistency with that. But I don't know. Dominator Duke doesn't come up all that often, so yeah. And this is sort of a tech card that I've been seeing, which is Secret Village of the Spellcasters. Basically, you're just gonna make it so your opponent can't drop like you. That's pretty much what this is. But you need a spellcaster on the field, so it's kind of a weird situation. You could make Momonaka and then go Avermax Pass or something, or you could just keep one Valance monster up, something like Hojo maybe for instance, and then Avermax Pass. And then that way you can keep Secret Village of Spellcasters up, and then they'd have to find another way to kill Hojo. But yeah, it's kind of tough because you want to keep something on field that is not going to be targetable. So I've been messing around with a couple different ideas, but it's there's nothing particularly easy for me to find. Because the only spellcaster link that's like worth using in this list is Beyond the Pendulum. So yeah, we'll see. Secret Village of the Spellcasters might not quite work out, but we'll see. It's also possible that I might try to play Pendulum. What is it? Pendulum something. It's Pendulum Halt or something. Pendulum Area. That's it. Pendulum Area. Which is obviously super floodgatey and super trashy, but it's very funny. So yeah. Anyway, there's that. Let's talk about the extra deck. Momonaka is your main fusion monster. He's pretty neat. I also just realized I have to re-put the Valance OCG guy here. Where are you? There you are. Yeah, so, Oh, I actually didn't. It completely erased my whole list I had going on here. What did I get rid of? I got rid of this, and then I put in. We'll get to this card in a minute. This card's gonna be an interesting tech in it, but yeah. So, Momonaka's here. Requires 3 valance monsters. The Pendulum effect is either special summon this card, or you move another card. So that's its whole Pendulum effect. And then this has a quick effect where I think it's during the main phase. Yeah, during the main phase, you can target 1 effect monster in your opponent's main monster zone. Place that opponent's monster face up as a continuous spell in their spell and trap zone in its same column. If the zone is occupied, destroy the occupying card, and if it is a monster card, your opponent loses life points equal to its attack. So it burns them if it's another monster. If it's a back row, it just pops it. So it's either one or both, basically. It's either pop or both. Burn and pop. So that's pretty good. Yeah, so you can only use this effect once per turn. If the special summon card you control is destroyed by opponent's card effect, you can place this card in your Pendulum zone, which is obviously incredibly good. So yeah, this card comes back basically for free, which is excellent. So yeah, Momonaka's pretty cool. Grand Duke. Grand Duke, it has 2 Pendulum effects that are the exact same as the other fusion. But this one is contact fusible, which is super cool. This face down card in the extra deck must either be fusion summoned or special summoned by attributing 1 level 5 or higher non-fusion valance monster in the same column as the extra monster zone. And it doesn't matter which extra monster zone it is, as long as it is one or the other. That's pretty neat. If this card is special summoned, you target 1 monster in your opponent's spell and trap zone, return it to the hand, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack, then this card gains attack equal to half the damage inflicted. So, on summon effect to bounce and burn. So that's not too bad, right? Could be a way to go for game again as well. But yeah, that's pretty good. We'll get to him in a sec. Abyss Dweller is next. Rank 4. So we have a rank 4 and a rank 8. I don't think I have to explain what Dweller does, but basically Dweller negates any effects that happen in the graveyard. So that includes your own graveyard effects, but you basically have like almost 0. You have like soul activation and place of beginning basically, and that's about it as far as I know. So yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty good that against tier obviously, so you want to be able to try to make it if you can. Next is Hope Harbinger. This is requiring 2 level 8 monsters. Once per turn, when a spell card or effect is activated on the field, quick effect, you negate that effect, and if you do, attach this card to that card to this card as material. So you add the spell card as material, which is pretty awesome. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can detach 1 material, change the attack target to this card, and perform damage calculation. If another face-up Xyz monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target 1 face-up Xyz monster you control. It gains attack equal to 1 of those destroyed monsters' original attack. So if you have Dweller die, but Hope Harbinger still in the field, you can make Hope Harbinger gain 19. That being said, I don't know why you would let people pop your Dweller unless it was like by card effect, I guess. But if it was by battle, it's like, yeah, obviously you're going to make people target the Hope Harbinger instead. So yeah, pretty neat. All things considered, that's a pretty cool effect. Then we got Access Code. I don't want to explain him, I don't think. Appaloosa. We have... I'm trying to think of generic ones. Musisha, Cerberus, Unicorn, and Avermax. I went with Cerberus because it's funny. Like, we have monster removal, but, like, in a weird way. I don't really have, like, destroy removal. So, I figured I try to have a monster removal in here. Although Phoenix might still be better. It's hard to say. We'll see. I might end up changing Cerberus into Phoenix. Just because you're going to be moving stuff backward anyway. So, I don't know. We'll see. And then Avermax. I don't think I have to explain Avermax. But if I have to, while it's under IP, it's not untargetable, indestructible. It's untargetable by default. Like, it's... Okay, this is what it is base. It's untargetable. Monsters cannot target other monsters for attacks except for Avermax. Once per battle during damage calculation, if this card battles a special summoned monster, quick effect, you can gain this make this card gain attack equal to that opponent's monster attack during the damage calculation only. If this link summon card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can shuffle one card on the field into the deck. So it's non-target shuffle, which is awesome. And then under IP, it's also indestructible. So you usually use this under IP being one of the link materials. So it's pretty neat. So, yeah, that's pretty cool, right? Alright, let's talk about some of the other links that we have in here. Some neat stuff. So we have Beyond the Pendulum, obviously. Beyond the Pendulum says 2 effect monsters, including a Pendulum monster. If this card is link summoned in the EMZ, you can pay 1,200 life points. Add 1 Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand, but for the rest of this turn, unless you Pendulum summon after the effect resolves, you cannot activate monster effects, and the effects of any cards in your Pendulum zones are negated. If 2 monsters with different original levels are Pendulum summoned at the same time to the zones, this card points to you can target 2 cards on the field and destroy them hard once. So, the thing that's pretty shitty about Beyond the Pendulum is that the effect of it being link summoned in the EMZ happens, you kind of get cucked. So for one, you have to do this first and foremost, because if you make IP first, then go Beyond the Pendulum effect won't be able to go off because it's not in the EMZ anymore, which is super annoying, so it's a little bit specific. And it's like the most ashable card on Earth. You're just going to ash this, because then it shuts down all my monster effects and my Pendulum effects, which is hot garbage. So, yeah, Beyond the Pendulum, not exactly my favorite card in the world. It makes me very frustrated, but it is what it is. Yeah, so Beyond the Pendulum is here. Next we have this one. So this is what I was thinking. Instead of going Apo plus Avermax, because it's not always useful, I was thinking about Runic in particular when I was thinking about something. I was like, what can I make that is protected by itself? Soldier of Chaos is pretty interesting, because I have 3 monsters that are level 7 or higher. So, with that being said, I can make this card untargetable and indestructible, just like Avermax. But then Avermax will still be the only thing targetable for attacks, which is pretty good. And then this card also has an effect where it destroys an opponent's monster by battle. It can activate one of these effects, which is obviously very good in turn 2, where I could make like access code, still have BLS and Avermax at the same time. So yeah, this card's pretty interesting. And it's also very common that I will use 3 monsters with different names, so that's not a big deal. So yeah, pretty good card. Might be a really hot idea for me to try, because it's very easy for me to make Avermax plus BLS in one turn based on the combos that I have available to me, so it's pretty useful. And then Musisha is basically only really there for the arrows, to be honest, but like, she's not bad. You can, I don't know, add a Pendulum monster from your hand to the extra deck face up, and vice versa. If one is an even, one is an odd. There's only one even in the entire deck, so I don't think that's going to really happen most of the time, unless I use Pendulum Shift first or something. Actually, no, that won't even work. So yeah, I don't know, it's not really for that. And then the other effect is not applicable because there is no self-record monsters in this deck. So yeah, it's pretty much just there for the arrows, to be honest. And yeah, it's there because Nightmare Phoenix won't have the arrows, so that's big poo-poo. Yeah, I don't know. That's about it when it comes to that card. Yeah, so is that everything? I've explained everything now, I think? Yeah, it is. Alright, so I'm going to split this video into 2 parts, because obviously this is a really long video. We're going to do a second video where I show off some of the combos with this deck, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that. I have to test a little bit first with this fusion guy first before I make a decision. And I also have to make a going first and a going second combo. And going second's a little bit sucky-wucky, depending on who you ask. So we'll see. I think going first could be more of a focus in the video, but going second, we'll see about it. Yeah, we might have to make that a third part or something. Who knows? Anyways, If you enjoyed the video, rate, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. I have gone on for too long. It is time to say goodbye, so I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.